Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining. Um, I'll start by sharing some slides with you. That should make it easier for you to follow. There's also a link in the chat. It's the same link that is showing on the bottom of this slide, which redirects you to all of the files that we'll be using in this session. So it gives you easy access to all of the information. I'm organizing this talk together with some colleagues from Ford. And Ford is, as many of you will probably know, the framework for open and reproducible research training. We are a big team science community working at promoting open science through education. And in that role, we often face the question of proper crediting. We are a community of over 1,000 people who are engaged in a variety of projects. And we want to make sure that all of them are recognized for the work that we are doing. And we found that this is a huge undertaking, which comes with many, many challenges. And that's what we'll be talking about today. I'm organizing this talk together with Emily Friedel, who is actually the lead of the team at Ford who takes care of crediting. I am one of the people involved in that team. And Flavio Azevedo, who couldn't be here today, he's actually the director of Ford, so he also oversees this entire process, and he is very much a champion of recognizing people for their work. So what is it that I would like to do today? In the first part, I'm going to be speaking very briefly about CROTs, CROTs, Contributor Role Ontologies and Taxonomies. You're probably very familiar with one of those called CRediT, because I presume that if you've been involved in some type of publication, you will have to have specified the different contributions through the CRediT taxonomy in order to get your paper published. And then we'll discuss whether the different roles, the different contributions that are involved in big team science projects, whether we can actually acknowledge them properly through this crediting or contributor taxonomy. And then in the second part, if we find that that might not be the case, we'll talk about some alternatives to credit. Okay, so very shortly, a contributor role ontology and taxonomy, or CROT, is basically a standard vocabulary to describe individual contributions to a scholarly project or research outputs. Usually this takes the form of a publication, because of course publications are still the main currency in academia. But in principle, it could be anything you do, any project you undertake for which you would like to recognize individuals' contributions. And a CROT is basically a official standardized system that allows you to recognize people's individual contributions. The one that you're probably most familiar with is CRediT. CRediT is short for Contributor Roles Taxonomy. And you're probably familiar with it because it's by far the most commonly used crediting system. One of the reasons why I think it's so commonly used is because it's both simple and comprehensive. So it has 14 contribution categories, which I think is still a number that's manageable, but at the same time covers many contributions. So I think it's a fairly practical instrument for recognizing contributions. It's available in several languages, which also helps with its accessibility. And it's been a NISO ANSI standard for a couple of years now, which basically means it's officially recognized as an industry standard. And perhaps one has contributed mostly to its success is that it has been integrated in several manuscript submission systems, and this is probably where you have encountered it. You can find it in Editorial Manager, ScholarOne, and in the OGS, the Open Journal Systems. Um, Here at the bottom of the slide, you find a link to a Google Doc, which basically lists the 14 contribution roles and credits, um, and their descriptions. I also have them here on the slide, but I realize that it's quite small, so you might not be able to read them all. So this is why I'm also redirecting you to the Google Doc in case you would want more information. And you can also find the link in the master file under the credits caption. So here are already 7 of the credit roles: conceptualization, data curation, formal analysis, funding acquisition, investigation, methodology, and resources. And then here are the other 7: project administration, software, supervision, validation, visualization, writing original drafts, and writing review and editing. I'm not going to go into many details about credit at this point. One, because we don't have the time, and two, because I think most of you are very familiar with it. What I would like to ask is actually whether we feel as a BTS community, whether this contributor roles taxonomy or credits suffice for recognizing the many and varied contributions that go into a big team science project. So the questions that I would like to ask is, do you feel whether these 14 roles sufficiently cover the different distribution, the different contributions in a big team science project? Whether these 14 roles are specific enough to differentiate between the different contributions, and whether they also suffice to recognize people's individual contributions in a fair manner. So in such a way that people's actual contribution, both in terms of time and expertise, is well represented through these 14 roles. And the reason that I'm asking this question is because it has been recognized by many people, including Bennett and colleagues, that there is this call for big team science, because we recognize that to solve many contemporary issues, we need large research teams with diverse skills. But often the contributions of several people in such a big team science project are not properly rewarded or recognized with the current incentives that we have, especially team infrastructure roles, so roles that have a more supporting role in hosting the community, for instance, or hosting all of the information that accompanies a big team science project. Those are roles that are not so commonly recognized in the publications that the big team community provides. So that's basically the question that I will be asking, whether you find that the many contributions that go into a big team science project are properly recognized through the credit taxonomy. And what I had in mind is the following. So here on this slide, you find a link to a Excel file and a Word file. And I'm inviting you to list the various big team science project contribution roles you are familiar with in the first column of the first sheet of this Excel file. I've already put there 2 roles which are very common in many lab studies, for instance, the role of translator and the role of translator coordinator. So the translator is usually the person who translates materials from one language into another so that the same study can be conducted in a different country. And the translator coordinator is the person who oversees the translation process and to ensure that decisions are consistently made across various languages to ensure that there is some commonality between the different materials. So what I would like you to do is add other big team science roles that you're familiar with into the first column of the first sheet of the Excel file, and also to provide a short description of that role in the accompanying Word file. I would like to spend about 10 minutes on that. And then I would like you to return for the next part. Um, Let me stop sharing my screen here and check whether there are any questions about that. No? So I see that Emily has already put the links to the files in the chat. So the most important ones are the ones called Excel and Word. So in Excel, you can list the various contributor roles, or the various roles, I should say, that feature in big team science projects. And then in Word, you can provide a short description of that role so that we are all on the same page as to what that role involves. And you can disregard the remainder of that Excel file for now, so no need to do anything else with it. We'll tackle that in the next part. So I propose that you all get to work on that, and then let's say in 10 minutes from now, we will return to see what you managed to do and what your experiences are. Does that sound good? And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat or ask them directly. Both Emily and I are here to answer them, and we'll also be monitoring the files. Okay. So thank you everyone for trying to map these roles that you provided onto the credit categories. If we have a look at the overview file, then we see that there are several roles that have been placed in different categories. There's many things we could say about that, I think. It might signal some ambiguity in terms of the credits taxonomy, or it could indicate that these roles fall under several of these categories, which wouldn't necessarily be a problem, I think. And I also suspect that many of these discussions or disagreements could potentially be resolved within a team if people can agree on what falls under what. For today, I'm actually most interested in those roles that have been placed under the other category. So where you had the feeling that they didn't fit really well into the current credit system. There are some that are placed in the other category that are also placed by other people, I presume, in existing categories. And then there are some roles that are only put into the other category. Maybe we can focus on those first. So this applies to outreach, column 10. This has only been placed in the other category. And if we have a look as to how it is defined, let me see in the file, expanding the visibility and building external connections, growing the network, building relationships with external partners and the public. So does everyone agree that doesn't fit well into the current credit taxonomy? And then the other role for which this holds is the ombudsperson or code of conduct lead. I presume all of you are familiar with the role of the ombudsperson, but that also doesn't seem to fit well into the current credit taxonomy. Is that something that most people agree on, or do people feel that it should be put into a different category? Is there someone who has taken on one of these roles?
Not of the second one, but I am part of the community building and network expansion portion of the psychological science accelerator, and that has never really been credited.
Okay.
Yeah, it is always as like you're an outreach person and that's it, and never really been credited as part of like it is a lot of work. We have, and we've done it in different ways, and we haven't been doing it in the past few months. But it is, I think, one of those things, and it usually falls into somebody that is underrepresented in big team science. So it is already somebody that uh, is has a lot of work to do and isn't getting enough credit. So I think that means that that needs to be changed and put in part of the credit of like maybe you weren't directly involved with it, but you might have brought in it when you do outreach, sometimes you're a recruiter, sometimes you're a translator, sometimes you're a uh, doing a lot of things all at once.
Yeah, I imagine that, and it's such an important role in the sense that you're actually providing many of the resources for the projects, also in terms of people who are contributing, of course. Um, could you, in that respect, say that perhaps it falls under resources, or do you think that resources is in credit at least understood in a more narrow sense? And maybe it's also not as nice to think as people about people in terms of resources.
I don't know. I think I'm right now I'm to the point that like let's tear it all down and build a new one.
Okay, no,
Heidi
that's
laughs.
fair.
uh, because I'm at that point in my life right now. Uh, and I do think I don't think I mean, it should fit in resources because a lot of the times right now, when we think of resources, we just think of like money and equipment. But we don't think of human resources as resources. And so like just putting this thing together like Heidi has done so much work that is just completely invisible because things worked well. And so I don't think I think it needs to have another box to be doing to be really
To
crediting people that do all
yeah,
of those things that is completely invisible because it works well.
yeah, to showcase these indeed these invisible contributions.
It mostly works well, Heidi. It can't be perfect, but yeah.
No, no, and of course, often when it doesn't work well, we also tend to not recognize it, right? It's the same with grant writing. It's a very laborious endeavor, and if it's successful, then these people are credited on the resulting publication. But all of the unsuccessful grant applications, they are just lost. All of these efforts are gone and are not really being recognized. Okay. Um, Emily, I think you had a strong opinion about translations that you wanted to voice.
Yeah, everyone seemed to think that everyone who sort of categorized it seemed to think it put it fit into one of the categories. Sorry, it's very early in the morning here and I'm only half awake. But Credit actually has it under writing original draft, which I don't think is a great fit, because what you're doing is you're taking something that's there and you're having to transform it. And like Nadia was saying, it's not necessarily like a one-to-one kind of deal. Like in sometimes, like I think the Bulgarian team at Fort for the glossary translation said this, so it's like a really difficult task to be able to translate that open science glossary into Bulgarian. It's not simple. So for me personally, I think that that's one that needs its own. Like it's a specialized skill. It's one of the few times that speaking a language other than English is actually recognized as like an advantage or sort of, you know, yeah, it's specialized. It isn't, I don't think it is covered by writing original draft. That's my opinion, strong opinion. So at Fort, we decided for at least for the website, we've added a specific translation category. So when people are credited on the Fort website, if they've translated, they get acknowledged specifically for that now.
Thank you, Emily. I see that Biljana has also raised her hand.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you very faintly.
Yes, I'm attending a conference at another place. I will try to be louder in case you can not hear me. I can try to write my suggestion inside the chat.
Well, now we can hear you quite well, so
okay,
go ahead.
Because I'm yelling practically in the room. Okay, I only had one suggestion. Something got stuck in my eye as regards the project management. I can see two different types of roles integrated into one. One is a project manager who has this macro managerial role of monitoring the progress of the project. And the other is a project manager that has micro managerial role that coordinates meetings, writes meeting notes, and more of an administrative job, secretarial job, which is much needed. I mean, nowadays I can see many BTS projects hiring people, securing funds to do this secretarial job, because it otherwise it overwhelms the leader with less important, I mean, equally important, but tasks that are very technical in nature.
Yeah, less conceptual work, I would say, yeah.
So I don't know whether we need to think about a separate role to separate those two roles. It's just a suggestion, something that came to my mind while scanning the doc, and I don't know how Credit has resolved this issue, maybe in project management and project administration, something like that. But that's just a suggestion. And also I want to excuse myself, I will leave quite early. But yeah, fantastic organization of this unconference, Stephen. Always happy to see you.
Thank you, Biljana, and thank you for your contributions as well. I'm a bit mindful of the time, and it looks like we won't be able to do everything that I had in mind. But let me very briefly share my slides again. So that I can get your ideas about what we could do next. Here we go. So we've identified at least a few roles that don't seem to sit very well with credits. And then the question becomes, what should we do with it? And I've listed here a couple of strategies, and I would like to get your ideas about what you think is an appropriate strategy. So one strategy is basically the one that we used here, is to add a other category, like a catch-all category, in which roles that don't fit the 14 existing roles very well can be described. And that can also take the shape of the creation of additional roles by a big team size project, much like what Emily mentioned, that in Fort, at least for the website, we've created an additional 15 category for translations. Another strategy would be actually to consider fewer roles, but then more general ones that could perhaps subsume all of the roles that we have identified. We can also keep the existing 14 roles, but build some kind of hierarchy to accommodate the fact that certain roles are maybe not a good fit yet. But if we would explicitly specify them under one of the 14 categories, maybe they would get some more visibility. And of course, there's always the possibility to add some more roles. The journal eLife already has the possibility to add an additional category specified by the people of the project. So this is a screenshot from the system that they have. So they basically have a box where they can add a 15th role. Sorry that I'm going so quickly through this, but we're running out of time. So here I have another example of an ontology called SCORO, the Scholarly Contributions and Role Ontologies. And they actually have just 4 contribution roles: intellectual, experimental, organizational, and authorship. And one could make the case that all BTS roles would fall under one of those 4 categories, for instance. This is Tadira, another taxonomy, which has 7 set roles: capturing, creating, disseminating, enriching, interpreting, storing, and analyzing. And then underneath these 7 set roles, you have an open list of lower level roles, which you can specify yourself. So this tries to keep the balance between having a fixed and feasible number of roles, but does allow you to recognize more specific contributions by subsuming them under these roles. And then an interesting one that I think is CRO, the Contributor Role Ontology, which is an expansion of credits, and a quite big one in the sense that the 14 roles have here been expanded to 92 roles. And as you can see here on the left, they're quite diverse. The issue with CRO is that 92 roles is quite extensive and sometimes difficult to wrap your head around. So let me stop sharing here and ask what you think would be a nice approach to try and capture those contributions that weren't well captured by credits. Do you think that adding a specific additional category for specific projects would be feasible? Do you think we should add more roles in general? Should we try to capture the contributions in fewer roles? What are your ideas on the matter? And here, please keep in mind those roles that we identified, such as translation, cultural adaptation, ombudsperson, grant writing, community building, that are usually not easily fit into credit, let's say. Does anyone have a strong preference?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It is tricky. So either you go and list everything and have like 100 categories, or or you don't credit things well, and maybe going smaller might be better and then be specific of just saying these are intellectual, these are support, and then just being specific of what people contributed. But then when you have teams like we have of like, I don't know, 100 people, then how do you, just the names are like 5 pages long. How do you credit this correctly? And the biggest problem for me is not crediting. Like if you are giving people credit, I think that's good. And it's a good start of just starting off with being like, this person needs credit, even though they were just recruiting, or maybe they were just doing cultural adaptation, but it is a lot of work. So I don't know. It's hard.
I like one of the terms that came up during earlier discussions, which I think was like some of these roles or tasks are related to, let's say, building an infrastructure, building a team, building, outreach, community management. Um, so that could be an interesting sort of term that captures something that's much wider than any specific project typically is. And I think the same holds to some extent for translations of questionnaires, right? So the goal there is not just to use them for the specific project, but potentially they could have a much wider use also. So it's, yeah, building this infrastructure, maybe that could be like an extra role or something that is that could be captured.
Okay, thank you, Ingmar. So do I understand you correctly that you would be more inclined to add perhaps 1 or 2 additional categories to credit than instead of going to the full 92 or 100?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think it will become so much more administration than to, fill out 92 roles. I think it's already quite hard, I think, in some teams to get this information, right, from all contributors. And then there's frequent discussion about, what falls under which category. And so if you're gonna blow it up even more, yeah, it will be too much, and it will become unreliable, that information, I think, in the end. So
Yeah.
keeping it somewhat limited is definitely a bonus.
Yeah, yeah. I think the feasibility argument is indeed a difficult one, especially with very large teams and projects that run across many years. It becomes very difficult to pull together all this information. I think we have to finish here, Heidi, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I was just going to say I have to run to go moderate another session, but you guys can keep going if you'd like. You can keep the Zoom room open. But I imagine it looks like some people are already dropping out, but it's up to you, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, I will stay here for those people who still feel like they would like to contribute something. Thank you, Heidi, for moderating. What I do want to say is that we have a Tenzing sheet where you can leave your details and so that we can actually recognize your contributions to this session. I think Emily is sharing it through the chat. It's actually in the Excel file where you listed the different contribution roles on the second sheet. So if you leave your information there, we will keep you updated about what we do with this information. So thank you all very much for your contributions, and I'll be here in case you want to add something.
That was good, I think. Like I got a lot out of that. There were a lot of different perspectives there that I sort of hadn't considered before. So that was really good.
Yeah, it was interesting. Oh, Nadia, were you saying something? I think you're unmuted.
I think you're on mute, Daria. Yeah.
Sorry. Just
You're
FYI,
right.
it's still recording. I don't think, and I can't, I don't know if I can
Let me
request.
stop the recording.
Can you do that?